I'm Daniel, and this is my guide dog, Quinlan. When matching a guide dog to a handler, it is critical that the dog and person are as much alike as possible to ensure a successful partnership. So naturally, it makes sense that he is smart, loyal, and really, really good looking. We have an incredible partnership. But growing up, the idea of a guide dog wasn't even on my radar. At 16, I lost my sight. But losing my sight wasn't the hardest part. The hardest part was losing myself. Growing up in a small farming community created the backdrop for an idyllic childhood, the outdoors, sport, and a closely connected community. I was surrounded by clear expectations of what it meant to be a man. Strong, independent, never needing help, never showing weakness. This confused me. At 12, I began wrestling with questions about who I was, about my sexuality, about where I fit in. I played sport, but were they the right sports? I did well at school, but was it okay to be academic? Did I have the right look? Was it even okay to care about how I looked? At 16, I was diagnosed with Leber's optic neuropathy, a genetic condition we didn't even know existed. Within just a couple of months, my sight disappeared, and so did the version of myself that I thought I was meant to be. At first, I tried to hide it, tried to carry on as though nothing had changed, living up to those silent rules of masculinity. I did my best to move around school quietly, tried not to stand out as different, and hoped that nobody noticed when I occasionally walked into things. On the outside, I seemed fine. I became school captain, I finished high school, and accepted an offer to study physiotherapy at university. At 20, I moved away to start uni, an opportunity to shape my identity around people who hadn't known me growing up. I returned to sport, even made representative teams just a couple of years after losing my sight. I started playing blind cricket, same game, modified by the use of a ball you can hear rather than see. I got my first guide dog, a chocolate Labrador named Bear. I progressed through uni, started to travel more independently. To everyone around me, this looked like resilience, success, triumph, a version of me that people admired. To me, it felt like a mask, and that mask was heavy. My mental health began to crumble under the weight of it. The more I tried to be who I thought others wanted me to be, the less I knew who I actually was. At 23, not long after representing Australia in blind cricket for the first time, what should have been one of my proudest achievements, I found myself in a mental health unit. On the outside, everything looked amazing. On the inside, I was lost. I remember when I first built the courage to tell a friend what was really going on. I spoke of the stress to fit in, of my mental health, and thoughts of suicide. I confessed it wasn't so much about my sight, but more about my sexuality and the challenge and desire to fit in. I'd rehearsed that conversation over and over in my mind, but never could I have anticipated the response I got. "That's great." She seemed happy, joyful. She wasn't dismissing me. She just knew that my fears of judgment didn't match the truth of how I was actually seen. I feared that raw and vulnerable conversation may weaken our friendship. It strengthened it. It took me a long time to realize something simple, yet life-changing. The people who loved me didn't need me to be invincible. Identity isn't about squeezing yourself into other people's boxes. It's about having the courage to live your truth. And perhaps the most important realization, asking for help isn't weakness, it's strength. I remember once failing a house inspection. I thought I'd cleaned well and was gutted when I was told the place was still dirty. When I told a friend this, he said, "Why didn't you ask for help?" I didn't have an answer. I thought vulnerability meant weakness. He said, "Everybody needs help sometime. Even a surgeon calls a plumber." That line has stayed with me. Because when you ask for help, you give someone else the chance to show up for you. Think of the pride you felt when helping someone who needed you. Imagine how others feel when you allow them that same gift. Both matter. Both give us purpose. At 27, I completed a triathlon. This is something I could have never imagined achieving, let alone after losing my sight. But what made the achievement even more powerful was sharing it with someone who guided me every step of the way. The joy wasn't just in crossing the finish line myself, but in knowing my guide shared that triumph too. Because without their help, I couldn't have done it. This isn't just my story. In today's world of social media, likes, and instant validation, so many of us are doing the same thing I did, editing ourselves into someone we think will be enough. But here is what I have learnt. You will never be enough for everyone's version of you. But you will always be enough when you are true to yourself. Strength doesn't come from perfection, it comes from authenticity, from living a life aligned with who you really are. To quote Dr. Seuss, "Those who mind don't matter, and those who matter don't mind." I lost my sight at 16, but that experience allowed me to gain perspective. The chance to see that identity isn't something handed to you by society, by the perceived expectation of others, or by the number of likes, comments, or followers. It's something you create moment by choosing to live honestly. So my message is simple. Don't try to be who you think the world wants you to be. Start embracing who you already are.